Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. I'm here as always with my good friend Andy, and we're continuing Andy's first-time read of Worm by Wildbow. Andy, how you doing? It was really good to see you over the break there, brother. Ready to return to Brockton Bay?
Well, after the traffic, when I was out visiting Arizona, I don't know that the traffic would be any better in Brockton Bay with all the streets torn up and standing water and everything. But they're working on the infrastructure, so they're getting there. So yes, I'm ready to return, and definitely was great seeing you out there. Today we will be reviewing Arc 20, Chrysalis, chapters 1 to 4. And as far as new business, we have some questions and comments.
We do. We got quite a few, and we're very much, as always, appreciative, including some first-time contributors. So thanks to the folks who just signed in for the first time. First off, we are going to hear from regular contributor Vale. And Vale says, I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season also, and look forward to your return. I'd like to ask a simple question. Name the most personally impactful scene in Worm for you so far. First thing that comes to mind, if that's okay. For me, up to the end of Arc 19, oddly enough, it's the scene where Taylor is with her dad trying to talk about the bullying with the school administration. The moment when Taylor flings the paper off the table and they are flying through the air. For all the things that happened in the story through Arc 19, that feels so impactful to her overall direction. It's what I thought of first when I asked myself this question. Look forward to every episode. Wonderful getting to follow along with your journey. Andy, you want to respond to Vale?
Sure. Well, the first scene that came to mind, I don't know if it qualifies, but just the first thing that I thought of was the scene where Gru had his second trigger event. The way that scene was portrayed and the way Wildbow wrote it up really has stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
Just second level horror and super intense. As far as, I don't know, the way Vale has talked about this is personally impactful. Maybe they're trying to say what they could relate to, or I'm not sure what they were going for there. What do you think?
I took it, I read it the way you did, your first
Okay.
suggestion there. And to that end, I think the scene, and this actually took me a little bit. I had to try to be honest with myself when I was recalling what I thought were pertinent scenes and making sure that I felt that way the first time through. And I still think that the scene, well, it's kind of a combo where Skitter kills Coyle, and in that moment in the van immediately after, where Rachel holds her hand.
Mm.
And, I went, I thought about that. I thought about the Leviathan fight where Bitch saved Skitter, but I kept coming back to this moment because it was very humanizing. This, I hesitate to call it a friendship, but this relationship between these two has been a journey. And this moment in the van where it was a supremely human moment for Bitch, whose psychology is almost completely canine. It was a very humanizing moment for her, and a significant milepost on her journey as a character.
Mm. Yeah, that was definitely a memorable moment. I could see that. And to be honest, I could probably think of 10 things pretty quickly. It's just been one of those stories where it's like, oh yeah, oh, did you remember, back
Mm-hmm.
like when we were in high school and we came out of a movie and we would just talk about the movie almost longer than the movie was, because there were so many cool scenes. This story has that feel to me.
I agree. I'd agree with that 100%. And next we hear from Highlander, longtime listener, first time caller. Love your discussion. Sorry to hear that you didn't like Parahumans online section, but glad the reason was it's too much like real life. Pardon me. It's too much like real form politics. G String Girl is revealed in the character's tag as Sveta or Garat from Dr. Yamada's interlude. So good call on it being a case 53. That's also why she struggled with the controls for the game Greg wanted to play instead. The character tags in the arc really confirm a lot of things that you can guess or infer from details provided. The big one that you missed is that Jan, the girl in that group of ex-ABB members Taylor forced to leave the city, is also involved in the initial attack on Emma, identified as Nose Ring in the character tags. And yeah, thank you, Highlander. You know, guys, I really should look at the tags. I'm just awful that way. Andy doesn't look at them because he's trying to avoid any spoilers, which I agree with. It's appropriate for him. I'm listening to the audio, but I'm going to try to do a better job of making sure I check the character tags at the end of each chapter. What do you think of Highlander's contribution?
Oh, I think that's great. I have to admit that I definitely my mind was going in a different direction based
Mm-hmm.
on the handle. And I think Greg's mind was going in a different direction as well. But that totally makes sense. It fits initial of a G, and she's got whips for appendages. So it's like a girl made out of strings,
Yeah.
deathly supersonic strings. But yeah, it'd make it really hard for her to play a
Mm-hmm.
computer game.
It says something about the character inside. She's just a kid. She wants this
For
poor
sure.
deformed case 53. Probably the most unique. Well, I don't know. I mean,
Gregor's
most,
pretty Gregor's pretty out there too,
yeah,
but this one's Fetta's got to be right up there.
for sure. For sure. And now we hear from Megafire 7. Happy holidays, lads. One of the fun parts of Taylor's fooling Sundancer and burning down Echidna with capes inside is that Regent, not too long ago, told her to lay down the law now that Gru was gone. No human sacrifices. And Taylor refuses to commit to that moral edict. And so we end up here. Yeah, I did not
Huh.
think about that until Megafire brought that point home.
I was thinking of it more as like a self-sacrifice thing, that Echidna had said, "Hey, if you will allow me to kill you, then I'll leave," kind of thing. And so I'd gone that way, but this totally makes sense too. And I remember it was kind of jarring at the time that Regent of all people would be trying to like draw a boundary somewhere, like, well, I'm not going to cross that line. It's like, seriously, now? But yeah, this is a pretty hardcore thing to contemplate. But Taylor was just like, yeah, we got to stop her somehow. And
Yeah,
they
to push slightly back on Megafire. I mean, it Taylor did say in the writing to your point to burnish your point, she had been speaking in terms of self-sacrifice, if I recall correctly. So
mm,
I mean, this is a fun, well, human sacrifice is not a fun subject, but this is an interesting way to point that play on words from that Wildbow put in between what Regent said and the actual eventuality.
well, and I think it really points to Wildbow's skill as a writer. I'm imagining as he was writing this, that he's thinking, oh, there are a couple different ways that people could take this. And as he's putting himself in the mind of Regent saying, oh, he could be delivering us this way, or Taylor could be interpreting it this way. And so I think it's really neat when these kind of things show up, and when someone points out that, oh, I was thinking of it this way. I'm like, oh yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. I had immediately dropped into this other interpretation. So it just makes the story that much more enjoyable.
I agree. And finally, we hear from Blake Sorensen. Finally, you're about to reach my favorite stretch of the story Arcs 20 through 24 are my favorite. Heightens your anticipation a little bit there, bud?
A little bit, although I've got to say that this part we're going to go over today didn't really jive with me too much. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess as I've said before, I read old school comics and there was the long dark ages where there was no superhero presence on the big screen at all, or even the little screen very much, unless it was just goofy stuff.
Right.
And so I just love the battles, and the anxiety, the tension that builds, and you don't know what's going to happen, and so I tend to get a little nitpicky on some of these other interaction things where it's like from the old Eddie Murphy thing. I'm reading the story, I'm like, well, what you gonna do now? You done dropped your pistol when you bust through the window.
Right.
Um, I get all like, well, why didn't you do this? Why
Uh-huh.
didn't you go climb up on the roof? You could have seen something from up there and use
Mm-hmm.
spider silk to swing away like Spider-Man or something. But in the midst of the battle stuff, I'm just like, whoa, I can't believe that happened.
Well, I look forward to seeing how you dive into this section that we're going to be going over there today.
All right. Well, I'm guessing I'll change my tune as we get into these other arcs. So,
We shall see. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the comments. Keep them coming. And with that, we will move on. Oop, actually, let me take a step back. So for those of you who are unaware, I want to shout out a new podcast that I stumbled across on Spotify, a group called the Brockton Bay Book Club. And they're doing a very cool thing. They've got two people in their group. If I'm not mistaken, they're a group of about six individuals. I'm pretty sure two of whom have not read Worm before, and so they're similar. They've got a similar dynamic to what we're doing here, and they're a fun group. So check out the Brockton Bay Book Club on Spotify, and I think they're up to Arc 3. See what you think of them.
very cool.
Yeah, always happy to find new groups covering this piece of work we've got here. So now we are going to start our review, starting with chapter 1, and it's a pleasant morning at the Heberts.
Hmm.
Skitter's getting herself ready to face the day, and flying bugs are bringing her brush here and cleaning up hair there and bringing her toothbrush in the next second. And she's really expanded the use of her power in just mundane everyday activities.
Yeah, it's really expanded. Not only the mundane activities you touched on, as you said, but she's monitoring the whole neighborhood. She's got all the it's like headquarters away from the headquarters, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
She's got all this stuff set up and is able to kind of flick through the channels, if you will, and then she's cooking breakfast while she's doing this stuff, and it's kind of amazing how powerful she's got and how interconnected she is with her swarm.
Yeah, Wildbow writes in there. She was doing the equivalent of patting her head and rubbing her tummy. Fun description, but seems to be pretty apt for what she's got going on. And like you said, the one moment she's monitoring her father puttering about the house, and yeah, the comment about her neighbor's cat. What did you think of that?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was pretty wild.
I mean, the cat's just out there living its best life, taking critters
Yeah,
out a little bit at a time, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, and Taylor just thinks of the disgusting kind of things that happen from maggots and that kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, that's just that. And you're like, oh, don't
Hey,
want to think about that.
let me bring up one thing, skipping ahead slightly. When Taylor and Danny are downstairs having breakfast, and Taylor brings up the idea of her not going back to school. I want to touch on the consistency of the characters. Now, I mean, you've read Lord of the Rings. You've read novels with great length and breadth. Me, not so much. This time through, I think I'm appreciating the consistency that Wildbow maintains with these characters. Now, granted, at this point of the story, if I'm not mistaken, there's only several months that have passed. But,
Hmm.
what's the word count that this guy has just put out over the length of his publishing of this thing? And this conversation between Danny and Taylor, to me, still rings true to where they have evolved to as individuals based from where we first met them. You following the point I'm making?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's kind of typical. I think I've read that as writers are creating their characters, they tend to take on a life of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And as the writer changes voices to different folks, it's kind of like, oh, that's right. This is motivation for that person, or this is their style of talking. And it's it kind of carries along. Now, the thing that I think is really amazing what Wildbow has done is that the consistency, but also that Taylor is really two totally separate people, right? She's got
Mm-hmm.
her regular home life, and then she's got her Skitter side of her life. And so to keep those two things, it's kind of almost like juggling chainsaws or whatever. You've got two different things you kind of keep in mind, I think, as you're writing it, that there's her external, oh, what mode am I in now? But then there's also her internal stuff. And he's bouncing back and forth between these, and it all makes sense. There's no jarring inconsistency or anything, like you were kind of pointing out, that it all flows together. So that's pretty impressive, I think.
That moment where she, I mean, okay, she's a teenage girl. The her wording was inartful to be kind, where she says, "I'll let you have a say in what I do." Um, Boy, that was kind of a dagger for me. I just that kind of hurt.
It was tough, and I don't know. This is I guess kind of what I had the hang up on
Mm-hmm.
for this whole section, and that is just that yes, Taylor is a teenager, as you said, it's only been a few months, but she's gone through the equivalent of like five major battles in World War II with what's been going on.
Okay, yeah,
I really I struggled a little bit thinking that she would be more changed and less. I didn't I thought she would be. So one of the terms that came out after the pandemic and
mm-hmm.
racial unrest and everything was just hyper vigilance. Everybody was just on edge, and you'd hear a noise and wake you up in the middle of the night. Normally something you'd sleep through, but you didn't know what was going on, and you were just, everybody was always keyed up. So I just assumed after what she's been through, all the near death experiences, all the creepiness, like Gru's second trigger event and all that kind of stuff, that she would just be kind of changed quite a bit more than is represented here. And you see it, I definitely think, in the exchange with Emma coming up. But I would just think that she would, she's kind of saying, I'm thinking I won't go back to school. I was thinking she was just going to say, I'm not going back to school.
I see what you mean.
So I thought this whole part was a little bit different than I expected, I guess is the best way for me to frame it. And
That's
so
interesting.
you
Well,
don't think.
um, again, this is one of those cases where you presenting it to me is giving me a second way to look at this.
Hmm.
I had not, and if I'm getting what you're saying, you would have expected more of an edge to her in this conversation based upon what she's lived through. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and the fact that this is like a funky little summer session,
Hmm.
and it's kind of sounds like it's kind of cobbled together a little bit. They're kind of rushing it. I would think it would be, and I would even think Danny'd be like, you know what, that'd be cool. You can hang out more at home. Let's just get you going in the fall. Let's think about it. So it
Interesting.
just,
Yeah. See, so I see what the point, how you're approaching that, and I'm coming at it from the other side where it's um the parent child relationship
mm,
specifically. I don't think I looked any deeper than that to the
mm,
to see where you're coming from, but I think what you're saying is extremely valid. So for me, it was all about that moment where she says, know, I'll let you. That
mhm.
one's rung with me for, I don't know, I mean, since I finished the story. Even that one really rung with me. And then it goes on to the point where Danny is talking about the relationship of parents to their children. Oh yeah, yeah. And then I'm knowing him and Han here. I did like the line where he said, I hope that if and when you have children, you never have to hear them say that. Now, you and I both have grown children, and we went through the process that Danny described about how, as our sons grew and tested the boundaries and yada, 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 that whole thing. I thought that was pretty well put together by Wildbow, and I think that resonated with me as well.
It's tough. I see where you're coming from with that. I can remember my son as he got older, we'd go visit my mom or my sisters, and my wife and I would confer and say, all right, we need to get home. And then we just pretty much grab our son and say, all right, time to go. And we'd bundle him off to the car. And sometimes he'd be in the middle of something and not be happy about it. But he got old enough and he said, we noticed in the car on the way home, he wasn't happy. And we asked him what was going on. He's like, I don't really like it when you just kind of jerk the string and I'm supposed to hop back in the car, maybe give me a 15-minute warning or something. We were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's legit. Yeah, you should have a say in that. It's nothing like what the exchange is going on here, but there is that progression as kids start to get into young adulthood and
Sure.
start realizing that, hey, I'm at school and if I didn't want to go to class, I could just walk out to the track and sit on the bleachers. Nobody watches
Mm-hmm.
and you probably would never know. So I do have some freedoms here. I'm starting to, exercise my own autonomy. And yeah, I understand you're the parents, but I should have a say in this too. And this has got to an extreme level here
Mm-hmm.
with Danny and Taylor. But yeah, this is a really hard point.
Their
Yeah.
their their relationship has been damaged for some time. So disappointment, as I
Mm,
said, for me, for the emotional strain that they've got, but consistency from Wildbow on where the relationship is. It's healed from that near catastrophic break,
mm,
but
right.
there's a wound there, and we don't gloss over that. It's there. We face it, and then it's pretty skillfully woven into the story, I think.
Yeah. I think you did a great job with that. That this is, you know, after a huge catastrophe, putting all the Taylor's secret identity aside and everything,
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of families are dealing with disruptions and everybody's kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. They think things are getting better, but you never know. And so there's going to be all sorts of this kind of tense dynamic going on in different families. And then
Yeah.
you add into it that Taylor is the supervillain down by the boardwalk. And Danny says that's a little more directly involved with the local supervillain in power. She's like,
Oh, if
oh,
only you knew, bro.
yeah, exactly.
If only you knew.
Guilty as charged. Oh, wait, you didn't know that. Sorry.
Oh gosh, my little girl grew up to be queen of the underworld in my town. Oh jeez. The two things. Forrest, hey, the guy that you who was one of your key characters of the arc, we get his name, and he's working for Taylor, working for Skitter.
I I gave a little cheer when I
Yeah.
saw that. Yeah, it's like, hey, my key character from Arc 12 is back. All right. Well, yeah, and I had to go back and read that again. That was just such a cool scene where
hmm
she's just trying to take on Mannequin, and all of a sudden this rando dude jumps in with these funky glasses, and he's just here. I'll hold him. You punch him, kind of thing.
Right, right.
Oh,
And now he's one of her lieutenants helping keep things organized while she's trying to balance home life with the equivalent of being the queen of the yakuza. I mean, okay, sure. Um moving further on, so Taylor and Danny make plans to try to meet up later on in the day. She's giving him this song and dance about working. Well, yeah,
mm.
not exactly as she means, but she's working on the boardwalk while she's going to make plans to go to school online or whatever. Another scene that left me shaking my head. They've got a little code that they're using in order to communicate, and they're texting back and forth between Skitter and her lieutenants. Turns out there's some stuff going on. Some punks tried to make a move, cause some trouble to some of the people living in Skitter's territory, and Skitter goes to deal with that. I'm sure you've got some feelings on that entire section where she dispenses justice, and that gentleman asks for leniency.
That was an interesting scene, and kudos to Wildbow. A lot of times in popular literature, different folks with different cultures and everything aren't painted in a very kind light, or biases come through. I thought he did a great job of portraying it fairly accurate way,
I agree.
and so hats off to him on that. But it's it's one of those things where you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
If she had done something to try to ensure that things were going to happen, then they're just going to come back, and they're probably going to be worse. They're going to know stuff. They're going to know vulnerabilities, and so it's a tough call. It's one of those things where it's an armchair quarterback kind of thing, right? It's
Sure.
easy to say, "Oh yeah." I think a lot about the Gollum from Lord of the Rings that you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier. Where they're ready to take him out, and Gandalf is like, you know, mercy is the one thing that we have that we can make a choice about.
Yeah.
That's all we can do with people who are in bad shape like that. And at first the other folks are like, I don't know about that, but in the end, it turns out if Gollum hadn't been around,
Mm-hmm.
then who would have who would have taken the ring with him into the lava? I mean, sorry for any people who haven't seen Lord of the Rings yet, but so but I thought it was a good balance. I mean,
Yeah.
she
I mean, bullet ants. I mean, sure.
right. That part was pretty messed up, but
I mean, yeah, gosh, how stupid are you? I mean, okay, I could see if you were a cape and you wanted to talk smack to this girl or whatever, but you're just some thug with no powers. You know this chick controls bugs, and you still trying to play like you're the man. I mean, okay, okay, all right, dude. Here, have
well
this bite.
they say that most people who go into the criminal profession are not, at the top of the intelligence ratings. So
Yeah.
I think we see evidence of that here.
And as we're heading toward the end of the chapter, so Charlotte and Forrest get the kids that they're in their charge, get them together and help them off to school. Oh yeah, Skitter. Well, I mean, she kind of admonishes a little bit Charlotte for bringing this Fern, this young girl, in to try to help out, and she wasn't properly vetted. It's like, hey, I mean, she's right. Yeah, okay, you trust her, but you really should send her by our super thinker to make sure this girl isn't a spy or anything like that. But Charlotte gets to school and there's a problem. And once again, Wildbow kind of closes a loop for us here.
Yeah, it looks like Greg is making waves there at school. And actually, I think the little scene with Charlotte and Fern really points out a good thing, and that is that it's easy for us as readers, I think, to forget that Taylor and Charlotte and all these folks are just teenagers, and
Yeah.
even though they're doing a great job trying to act like FEMA on steroids, they're still going to overlook stuff. They're still going to cut corners. They're still going to not think of everything, not dot every I and cross every T. And it's easy to think that, oh, well, they're going to have everything figured out, but they're not. There's no way. Even people like Coyle, who had done that was his thing. He was able to look at all this stuff and try to set up the perfect plans. Even he was sometimes tripped up. And so I think that's a good reminder. It's easy when you're thinking of Skitter or Taylor cooking breakfast and monitoring the neighborhood and checking out the cat's leftovers and doing all this stuff all at the same time, that, oh, well, she's got everything nailed down. And it's like, well, no, she's in high school. She
Yeah. A
can't think of
superpower.
everything.
Yeah. Superpower will only take you so far. It won't make up for life's experience. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So as we're moving on into chapter 2, Taylor decides to go. Okay. All right. Yeah. Armchair quarterbacking here. When you hit this point, let's see if I can get you to relive your thought process here. When you got to this point where she made the decision to go to Arcadia, did you think that was a smart move? Before everything else went down, did you think that was a smart move?
No,
Okay,
I
good.
I
I'm not
didn't
alone.
I didn't understand why she was going there at all. And again, this gets back to what I was just saying, what we were kind of kicking around, and that is that if I wish she had done kind of more of the Coil thing, send some
Mm-hmm.
delegates, send Forrest to hang outside the school with a description of Greg, and when he comes out, just stomp him, or do something. Tell him to go to a different school. Tell him to whatever. Make up something, but don't go yourself. That's
Mm-hmm.
just like putting your head in the lion's mouth. She didn't like school to begin with. She didn't want to go. And her whole thing is delegating her swarm to go do things.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, yeah, the queen bee comes out of the hive and goes right where they have all the bug spray. All the raid is right there. Even kids who have to go to school don't want to go to school. They know it's
Mm-hmm.
draconian and rules don't make sense. And at any given time, you can get busted for something. You're like, what happened? And so that was a real head scratcher for me. That's where the Eddie Murphy quote comes from. I'm like, oh, don't go into the school.
Yeah, yeah. I one of those, like you said, it's one of those moments where you just kind of go, no, girl, this is again, even before things do go south, you're thinking to yourself, no, this cannot end well. Let's see here. So she does. Well, she looks at her options. She's trying to figure out. Yeah. Let me backtrack a little bit. She does give us a mental layout of some of the other villains that have come to town.
Hmm.
Skipping back just a little bit here, we get word of the ambassadors. Tattletale and Gru were going to meet with Accord, a name that we know, and she was worried that Tattletale might cop a little too because she's not a fan of other thinkers. Which at this point, yeah, we know our girl Tattletale. Just she's the smartest cookie around. When faced with another thinker, she's got to be on top.
Yeah, I was reminded of a scene from a movie, A Beautiful Mind,
Yeah.
and the guy who's the local math whiz goes off to the big school for college, with all the other math whiz guys, and one of them decides to teach him how to play Go. And Go is definitely kind of a math based thing. You're putting beads on vertices in a giant matrix, and it's trying to juggle a bunch of different functions, curve fitting on a in a game. And so it should be very straightforward. But there's lots of it's one of those simple to learn, hard to master games. And the main character finds that out and just gets so mad, flips the board, and
Yeah,
I really think of Tattletale in that kind of regard. And I get it, it's just
sure.
it's a my dad can beat up your dad kind of thing. It's
Yeah, yeah. So skipping back to our section here in chapter 2, Taylor takes the bus over to Arcadia, and she notices something, and this was something, again, one of those things that I didn't think was important until Wildbow wrote it, and he talks about the differences in the dynamics. There was two specific types of
mm,
kids at the school: ones who stayed and ones who left, who vacated. And Taylor sees that, and I thought it was an interesting thing to put in that, like I said, you didn't know that you wanted to find out about that till he wrote it. And it's like, oh yeah, there would be these kids who were kind of shell shock, who were world weary sort of situation, the ones who stayed and the ones whose family had the means to escape, and their little sunnier disposition.
yeah, and I thought he also did a good job of portraying the school and the system they were setting up in a kind of an enlightened stance. They weren't trying to rush everybody in. They were trying to be protective. They were trying to give people an opportunity to learn and to get kind of back in the rhythm of normal life. But they recognized that some people weren't ready for that,
Yeah,
and that it totally made sense. And so they were like, yeah, if we're going to take your weapon away from you, if you don't want to take your weapon, you can't come in, but we're not going to cuff you. We're not going to report you.
right.
It's totally normal that you feel like you got to walk around with a weapon right now. Everybody knows what kind of stuff has gone down. And so I thought Wildbow did a great job of setting that up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the other aspect of it is that you could definitely tell the folks that stayed and the folks that bailed and then were trickling back in now that seems like things had calmed down.
So after having a minor encounter with one of the security guards at the entrance, Taylor heads on into the school and heads toward the office to get information on where she might find Greg. She uses a bit of a ruse to get class information. And after several efforts going in and out of a couple of different rooms, she runs into him. She finds him. Okay. We all had our awkward moments in high school. It wasn't none of us cool from Jump Street. So I don't want to lay into Greg for his awkward nature, but I mean, dude was kind of a he was kind of a dweeb.
He was, but I really tried to put myself in his place. You're in a world where there are tons of people with superpowers and secret identities.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're into that kind of thing at all, then kind of a holy grail moment for a high school student would be figuring out a secret identity, and trying to play amateur detective, if you will, or bored wannabe. And here he thinks he's got it figured out. And in fact, he does.
Yeah.
And
And
so
it's a girl that he had a bit of a minor crush on top of all that.
right. And so it's just like my superpowered girlfriend. How cool is this?
Yeah.
And so I can relate to him, and I think I would have to admit I probably would have even handled it more awkwardly than he did. But
I'm not throwing any
um
stones, bro.
but man, the gaslighting that Taylor pulls on him
Yeah.
is pretty well done. I mean, that's she figures out how to deal with it pretty quick on the
Yeah.
just pivots and really, wow, he goes from dancing around and I know a secret to fine, I'm a loser. I'm gonna go crawl under my rock.
Just kind of standing there dribbling. Just,
Exactly.
oh, dude. I mean, she did her inner Taylor comes out and she actually feels bad. She relates to
That's true.
that situation. Thinking about how she recognized that, inartful as it was, he was trying to spare her feelings at one point during the
Hmm.
conversation. Oh, right. Here's this one section where it says here, Taylor says, Greg, I said, I don't want to hurt you and I don't want to be your enemy. You have to understand the last little while has been scary. I'm guessing you didn't stay in town. I did, he said. Then he stopped, breaking eye contact. I was on the outermost edge of the city on the other side of Captain's Hill. And Taylor inwardly kind of scoffs at that. And from that conversation, I one gets the impression as like the difference from being downtown Phoenix and, maybe Queen Creek practically.
Hmm.
And so this leads into, if you think back to the Parahumans Online thing, where everybody was kind of giving it to Greg for not being one of the ones who stayed. I think that's where that kind of circles
Hmm.
back to that dynamic as well.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, you had the folks that you could definitely see those who had lived through it
Mm-hmm.
and those who had skated out. And yeah, Greg's kind of in that gray area. Well, where you live is a prime example.
Yeah,
You've got these giant storms that are coming out of the desert, and you don't know if they're actually going to make it to you or not, but
precisely.
it's still tense. You're still on pins and needles, because that one that does get through, you're like, holy Toledo, it practically
Mm-hmm.
ripped the roof off and my power was out and it flooded my garage or whatever. And so Greg definitely felt some of the tension being that close and not being able to leave, but it's not the same as, oh, that shadow outside that I thought was a cloud, that was an endbringer going by. That kind of sucks. uh,
Yeah, yeah. So to close out that subject on Parahumans Online, there was some validity to what those people were saying when they kind of scoffed at Greg's wanting to be considered a survivor, because as you said, it was in kind of that gray area. But that kind of ties that all up. So Taylor does talk him down, talks him off the ledge as far as blurting out, hey, this is Skitter, and in front of the entire school. I know who Skitter is. Did you, sir, did you pick up on who that kid was who came up to Taylor and Greg?
I did not. I I thought there must be something going on because the way Wildbow described that the person paused
Mm-hmm.
and that he wasn't a big guy, but yet
Yep.
he felt confident enough to kind of step in a little bit. I mean, I was kind of that way in high school too. I wasn't a big person by any stretch of imagination. Not that I am now either, but I always had that big dog inside kind of thing, that if somebody I knew was in trouble, I would dive in and do whatever I could, or even if it wasn't somebody I knew very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I was reading that, I was like, there's something else going on here, but I did not pick it up.
Yeah. So I didn't pick it up at all. This one went right by me, my first read. And as I was going through this, I text Tony and I'm like, was that kid Win? Because I couldn't remember who had what hair color. And Tony
Mm,
got back to me. I guess he popped on and checked the name tags at the bottom of the arc and the chapter. And he's like, no, that was Clock Blocker.
wow.
And I was thinking to myself, well, yeah, of course, then this makes sense because he was fighting right side by side with Skitter. He would have seen
Hmm.
some of those Skitter clones, and as deformed as they may have been, my guess is that he's the one who contacted the PRT, and that's why things are
Mm.
fixing to hit the fan, so to speak. Now, chances are I'm supposed to know that, and I'm just now putting it all together. But
Huh,
such is life when you've got a memory of mine like mine. It's
huh.
5 minutes long. Anyway, As we're moving to the end of the chapter, Miss Emma shows up. This is right after Skitter diffuses the situation with Greg successfully, and she's going to go try to have lunch with her dad. And here comes Emma. Oh, boy.
And this was another time though where I was just like, wow, Skitter, the master tactician, should have found a different way out. I mean, she made one change in a move, and she says the problem was the gate. But it's like, I don't, I'm no James Bond or anything. And obviously, I was never in a campus lockdown kind of situation. But, and I wasn't one of those kids that like ditched classes and skated all the time. But I knew probably 10 ways to get off campus without anybody seeing me leave. And
But
I just
see,
can't imagine. And this
see,
wasn't her school, I know too, but
but see, I'm gonna say, um, this is her not wanting to, because I mean, Wildbow even says she doesn't want, part of her doesn't want to avoid Emma. And I think this might be that tough edge that you were talking about when you thought she might should have had that with her father. This is kind of that tough edge. Like, why am I having to deal with this chick? I'm not going to back down from her. I'm going to go about my business.
yeah, that's a valid point. I guess this is again one of those things though where it's like I wish she had just had more of a coil mindset. She's
Yeah,
the queen bee now. She is the supervillain running part of the town. And Emma is like a piece of lint compared to the stuff she has to deal with. It's like,
true.
yes, she was a big part of her life back then, but that was then. This is now. It's just like, why even risk the heat it could bring if something happened? Just go out a different way. And Emma's left fuming, and you go back to your real life of running the town. Um,
Yeah.
you cleaned up the mess. You got a victory. Walk away. You did what you came to do. Now get out before something else. You kick another hornet's nest or something. But yeah, I get that she's. I don't know. I would just think that somebody who had taken on Mannequin and Jack Slash and everything, it'd be just like, yeah, Emma, I don't even waste my time. I don't even want to break a sweat. I'm just gonna walk away.
Okay. So with that, with your position being stated fairly here, let's talk about the overall structure of the chapter itself. The way that Emma's portrayed here, it's believable. I don't
Mm.
like it, but it's believable. I mean, we've now been privy to the trauma that triggered, to use your word, that triggered her to being this way. It doesn't excuse how loathsome she is, but we understand it.
Yeah, I really don't like Emma.
No.
I agree with what you say that you can see what led her to be the way she is, but it's just so annoying to have her be the one that kind of causes these problems yet again.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's part of it too, is that even people who have moved on and gone to bigger and better things, there's still sometimes those that bitterness or the regret from people in the past, and it's really hard to be able to put that away. And again, the past is not that long ago, right? It's only 3 months or whatever, 6 months. So,
No,
and in
no,
the
no,
life
no.
of
Think further back though. What drove her? What the events that triggered her to become this way took place 2 years ago. They were like eighth graders. So this
okay,
goes
yeah,
all the way back to then. So I
that's
think
true.
Emma would have benefited greatly from a few sessions, maybe a half a year's worth of sessions visiting Jessica Yamada, frankly.
Yeah.
But you know, que sera, sera. That we're here. This is where we are. So Taylor does try to shrug this off. I did like, even though it's from this hateful person, Wildbow uses Emma to backfill the story when it comes to what happened to Taylor's mother. So now we get more of a
Mm.
full picture of what actually happened and why didn't Danny want her to have a cell phone and what happened there, why he kind of went into his own shell and kind of forgot, if you will, about Taylor right after her mother was killed in a traffic accident. So nice job filling in those blanks for us.
Yeah, that was good backstory there. It is unfortunate the way it came out, and it just shows how low Emma will stoop
Mm-hmm.
when she's not getting the reaction that she wants. She's not seeing the person cringe in pain the way she wants them to, that she'll just pull out
Yeah, and then
whatever horrible thing.
she has the audacity to be all indignant and be like, "Well, if only you acted this way back then, we could have been friends still." And I'm like, "Nah, girl, no, no. Who would want to be your friend after all this?" And you call this girl, you tell her that she's responsible for getting her mother killed, and now she's standing up, and now you could have been my friend. We could have still been friends. No, get out of here with that noise.
Yeah, it's just she's flailing.
Yeah,
She's not getting the response she wants, so she's just trying to say anything that'll, it's like some of the scenes that Wildbow showed earlier, where the group is picking on Taylor, and they're just throwing out weird comments.
yeah,
The bootlicking toadies are saying, "Oh yeah, blah 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 blah," and you're just like, "What? That How is that supposed to be an insult? You sound like an idiot."
yeah.
And even Emma would be like, "Ah, just shut up. You're so lame."
Right.
But now she's the lame one.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say. She's the one left standing there looking idiotic because she has no other cards to play. Because Taylor Hebert slash Skitter has faced off against Leviathan, the Slaughterhouse Nine, Coil, and she's still here to talk about it. And
Yep.
Emma, okay, Emma was darn near tragically assaulted. I mean, okay, but yeah, this she's nothing compared to what Taylor has already dealt with. I don't want to blow past something here. Taylor thinks about hurting her and how nice it would be if she did. Did what was your thoughts on that?
Well, that was finally, it seemed like, where Taylor kind of kicked into the tactician mode and said, "All right, yeah, it would be nice, but that's just going to make things worse." So, she senses Emma's coming up behind her, and she's just like, "All right, no, I'm just going to let it happen." And then finally, Emma gets something that's coming to her. So it was the
Well,
right choice at that point. I just wish she had just, like I said, walked away, and totally avoided it altogether. But
no, even right before Emma comes up and slaps her, when Taylor is thinking about what it would be like to have her bugs assault her, I'm talking about that section where she
mm,
and having the bugs clear out just long enough for Emma to see Taylor standing over her basically and
mm,
realizing the word that I came up with was disturbing because I think is that is Skitter. Um, how am I trying to say this? That's a place that I'm not sure several months ago in the story time Skitter would have gone.
that's a fair point. Yeah, but it's totally understandable. I mean,
Yes, yes,
she killed somebody, right?
right.
So, um, not just participated in something that happened. She pulled the trigger.
That's true.
And so, yeah, she's definitely crossed a lot of lines, and that does things to people. And they're less likely to restrain themselves. It's just like, oh, for whatever reason, you do something and the consequences you expect don't happen. You're kind of, well, I felt really bad doing that, but all right, I guess if it comes up, I might have to do it again.
Yeah.
So I think that is a little scary. Yeah, it's almost like seeing the little flames flicker in somebody's eyes, and
Hmm.
you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah. I
realize you were
wanted
that
to.
big.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that because even now, it just kind of like whoa. I mean, yeah. To your point, yeah, this was that edge.
Hmm.
Not a fan of seeing it, but it's there, and Emma really doesn't know what she's playing with here. So after she slaps Taylor, Taylor keeps her cool, like you pointed out there. The guard on duty gathers up Taylor, Emma, and a couple of witnesses, and they head off to the principal's office as we're moving further on in through chapter 3 here. And we meet up with Principal Howell in her office, and she talks to the guy and says, "Okay, give me the short version." Boom, boom, boom. He relays to her what went down. And poor Miss Emma, she finally starts to get what's coming to her.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really cool. And I guess the stuff that the principal's able to pull up, I figured that's what triggered the protectorate. That that Dragon had put listeners basically in the systems around the city to try to, if this person shows up on a street cam, or
Hmm.
if this person, somebody looks up information about this person, and that
Oh.
that was kind of what, not so much the guy clock blocker seeing her in the hall, but
Uh-huh.
that because I don't know, maybe I read that wrong, but it almost seemed like clock blocker was
In-
whoever.
incidental.
Well, not incidental. No, I it seemed like there was something significant there, but almost like he made the decision that, you know what, I'm gonna let it slide. I'm not gonna.
Oh.
She's here trying to take care of something. It looks like she's in the middle of. She's not causing problems. I'm not gonna report this or whatever.
Okay. The unspoken code among capes. Maybe I should have thought about that.
Maybe a little bit, yeah, and also just the way they connected in the fight against Echidna.
Right.
Then they seemed to. Maybe he was like, "Oh, you did me a solid. I'll cut you some slack," kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's just me being a computer guy. But I assumed that, just like, hey, we're seeing that somebody's passport got flagged here going through this airport, kind of thing. That that was like an NSA kind of moment. That when the principal pulled up her records, it was like, oh, we got a flag on Taylor
Yeah.
Hebert.
Yeah.
But
And again, with this may get answered in part 2 of our review. So
okay,
I may or may not should know this already. Yeah. So Taylor gets justice. Now, again, going back to consistency here, she has trouble with how this justice is meted out because she feels that the system was rigged against Emma. I mean, yeah, okay, great. Things
mm,
worked out in my favor, but it's only because the system was screwed up. The same system that was screwed up in her initial issue when her and her dad went to talk to the administration about the bullying. Yeah, the only reason this is going down this way now is because this principal lady has an in with Tattletale.
yeah, and that was pretty brilliant. I mean, I'm kind of bagging on Skitter's tactical expansion, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to cover all the bases. But Tattletale's definitely been thinking about this stuff and trying to build a safety net for her team. And so that was pretty cool to see. I was cheering a little bit for Tattletale's intervention there.
Yeah, I'm not fault.
Tragic also. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I'm not faulting the principal. We got another one of these scenes where Wildbow gives us a character, and in a short period of time or a couple of paragraphs, I end up liking this person. Okay,
Hmm.
her primary concern is providing a safe environment for her students. We find out that her friend, her mentor, he survived all this horror only to be killed in a fight afterwards. So
Hmm.
she's all about protecting her kids in the school, and she kind of made a deal with the devil to do so, but that's the price of doing business in Brockton Bay, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah. Deals are all different at Brockton Bay for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
she's trying to protect the students, and that's very admirable. And yeah, I liked this character a lot right off the bat.
And then as we're moving to the end of the chapter, the principal is meting out justice to Emma. She asks Taylor to wait out in the front area of the office. And she sends her a distress call that was sends out paperwork for Taylor to fill out. Taylor reads all this message about 911 incoming street. She looks over at the principal who's inside her office, and the principal mouths the word run. Yeah, the bombs are about to start dropping, and Skitter heads out of the office. She tries to make her escape.
Yeah, that was just kind of like, see, I told you
Yeah,
you shouldn't go to the school.
yeah. And this is it. We're moving into chapter 4, which will be the final chapter that we're going to cover in this episode. And she tries to escape. She goes through it's a whole thing. She starts using her bugs a little more aggressively, trying to map out possible routes out of the school. Gets the layout of the facility. I mean, she'd only ever been there, I believe, just that one time before when she was fighting Jack Slash. She almost gets a plan figured out. Well, we'll cover that when we come to the end of the chapter. But yeah, she makes her way into the cafeteria and ends up sitting next to Charlotte. Nothing good is going down at the moment.
No, and again, yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and that is that this isn't her school. I was kind of thinking of it from the sense of, oh, well, I went to the same high school for 4 years and I knew all these things about it, but that's not the case here. But I'm still going to be a little hard on her.
Sure.
And that is just that I would have expected her. I know she was really concerned about people seeing the bugs doing weird things, or people were looking at her like they knew who she was and stuff. And I think Wildbow did a great job of showing us again that even though she is Queen of Brockton Bay, she is still a teenager and is still fraught with those feelings of people knowing stuff that there's no way they could know. I mean, every kid in that school, in one way or another, is caught up in their own stuff. And so she could have had a line of cockroaches going down the ceiling, and people would have looked at it and said, oh, that's weird. They wouldn't have thought instantly, oh, Skitter's here. They would have thought, oh, something died up in the ceiling, and all the bugs are going there. But Skitter's focused on, oh, they'll know it's me, or and people that look at all those people sitting there. They know I'm a super villain. But I wish she had just kind of, all right, I'm going into a new place. I'll send in some bugs, start scouting exit paths, what places I can hide, that kind of thing. And she didn't do any of that. And so I'm still going to be a little hard on her that she should have scouted it out a little bit better, not just walked right into a sealed in environment, where she's totally at a disadvantage.
Yeah. So when she ends up in the cafeteria sitting next to Charlotte, she mentally does the equivalent of pulling out her Game Boy and starts assembling decoys and doing battle with the heroes and the guards that are out there, Oh, these poor guys. Hey, what did you think of that Kate Sear, the one who was kind of not necessarily the inverse of Gru, but he manipulated moisture.
The human desiccant.
Yeah.
It's great to have around if your cell phone drops in the pool or something. Hey man, can you fix this up for me? But I thought that was pretty cool power, actually, and it was unfortunate how effective it was around the bugs. That definitely played into it. But I think finally at this point we're seeing Taylor's fully gone into Skitter mode, and she's trying to do it. Like I said, I wish she'd been a little more proactive, but reactive is better than not active at all. And she's trying to find a way out. She's trying to distract things. But even with the alarms, what's a classic thing that we see in movies all the time? The way you distract somebody is you set off an alarm at one door and you go the other way. and they all rush to the door that you open, and
Yeah, true.
but you skated the other direction. So I just sorry, I'm a broken record here.
Don't
I'll move on.
apologize. Don't apologize,
Um,
man.
but yeah, I even liked Sears' costume. That he was
Hmm.
kind of this desert nomad, Bedouin looking
Yeah,
type thing. That was pretty cool. I like that theme.
yeah. She does note with via her bugs two young male students urgently leaving a classroom and heading down some room where they have some privacy, and they change, and it's Clock Blocker and Kid Win.
Yeah.
She notices something that Clock Blocker has, a new piece of equipment, kind of an oversized gauntlet. That's interesting. Any ideas?
I don't know. I was scratching my head on that one a little bit. I'm guessing it's something to do with kind of what happened with Echidna, that maybe he's got something that'll shoot out
Mm-hmm.
a string or something, and then he can have a connection. But I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Well,
It was interesting though.
let's see. So as she's sitting there talking to Charlotte, like I said, she is using her swarm clones to go out there and do battle with the capes. She finally figures she thinks she's got everything in place. She's taken out Seer, I believe it is, taken out a couple of the heroes. Got used Kid Win to open the door and let her swarm flow inside, and she does begin to be more effective at that point. And she says to Charlotte, "Okay, I think everything's cool. I'll catch you later tonight. I'm gonna head on out of here." So she makes her way out of the cafeteria, just walking out like she knows what's going on. Nobody says anything to her. And she goes to exit. And on the other side of the door lands a metal suit. And she feels landing on the other side of the school, another one. Yeah, right outside the door. It's Defiant. And he backs her into the cafeteria, and then Dragon shows up. This day's just going from bad to worse.
Yeah. Her swarm was able to handle kind of the light weights, but yeah, these folks, as not gonna there's no way she's got enough stuff going on. She doesn't have any of her usual equipment,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's caught. They caught the bug.
Yeah, they laid out the Roach Motel, and unfortunately, Skitter rolled right up into it. And then
Unfortunately.
this final paragraph, Skitter Dragon answered me loud enough for everyone to hear. Her voice was almost gentle. I'm sorry it worked out this way. My hand was forced. So we know Dragon's an AI, so there's something there. We know the
Mhm.
parameters under which Dragon has to function. So there's something there. You want to put out what that means. You want to think about that, speculate. Her hand was forced. We know that she has to obey the authorities because of her programming.
Right. Yeah, she definitely has parameters that restrict what she can do and force what she can do. And so based on what I alluded to earlier, I think there were alarms set up in the computer systems, in the schools, in public services, that if Taylor Hebert came up or certain things were flagged and those flags were tripped, that the message would go out. I think we've seen a little bit that Dragon may not be as restricted as she was designed, that she has
Mm-hmm.
evolved a little bit. But I think there was something here where whoever set up that programming also set up what had to happen. And I think that's what she's referring to here. Dragon always hoped that there'd be some way that things would kind of work out, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that they'd be able to work not on the same team, but that she knows Skitter is not anywhere near like the Slaughterhouse Nine or any of the really bad villains. She has a code, she wants
Mm-hmm.
things to improve and that kind of thing. But here Dragon is, well, no, you came in and the alarm went off and my programming says I have to take care of the threat. And that's how I read that.
Okay. Cool deal. All right, there, brother. That's the end of chapter 4. Do you want to add on to that? Any final thoughts for this section we've covered?
Um, Nothing in particular. I just, as I said at the outset, I look forward to things getting back to more of a battle.
Sure.
That's my favorite part. So, and I love the stuff that focuses on Taylor and her building her empire, if you will, and that kind of thing. But I think I really like the dynamics when the whole team is together or parts of the team are together
Hmm.
and they're playing off each other. So I'm guessing they'll have to come bust her out of the Hooskow at some point here in the near future. And so looking forward to reading about that.
Cool deal. All right. And with that, folks, we are done for this section. This is the end of part 1, and in part 2, we will cover the remaining portion of this arc. So for now, we'll be signing off. Apologies for this one coming about a week later than we initially planned. I had some automotive issues I had to deal with, but we're here now. We're back, and we'll be putting them out on as regular schedule as we can going forward. So thank you so much, everyone, for spending time with us. Please come back and catch us for part 2. And until next time, take care.
I know we didn't say it at the outset, and it is over half the month, but Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. Thanks for sticking with us and yet another year of the podcast. We're thoroughly enjoying it, and we hope you are too. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more information in the link down below. Catch you later.